pledge allegiance of the flag and remain standing for the invocation. Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Most gracious Father, we thank you for the opportunity to be here to conduct the business of our community. We pray that you will guide our decisions, that we might always keep you in the forefront. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, man. Could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember McDonald?
Here.
Graham?
Here.
Candia?
Here.
Day?
Here.
Mayor Martina?
Here. Declaration of conflict of interest?
None.
There being none. Ceremonial matters. We have none tonight. Items from the public. This is non-agenda items. Anyone would like to get up now and speak to the council, please go to the podium and state your name and give us all that good information.
Good evening, members. My name's Tom Capps. I'm manager of the Newman Library down the street. Just want to talk about some events that are coming up for the month of March. Some exciting stuff even going into the month of April. We're having Cat in the Hat, Search the Hat, the library, and we'll have prizes for the children. We're going to start something new on Saturdays, the first Saturday of the month, where it'll be a family fun day where we'll have coloring and some board games, just to get the family out to have some time at the library. We're going to be having, I know we've had floods recently in the area, but starting crafts with science, technology, engineering, math idea behind it. The one we have here for the 18th on a Saturday is about earthquake. We're going to make some stuff out of spaghetti and marshmallows and then destroy it. So just have some fun. We've also have a teen craft on the 25th, bottle sand art, which is exciting and very colorful. And then at the end of the month, the Dr. Seuss Cat in a Hat craft and snack, because it's his birthday is on the Thursday. Also, in the month of March, March 5th through the 11th, it's a teen contest for making memes, so some technology aspects of it. And it's a contest, and we have an entry form. They enter it, and they can get a prize, and it'll be something we post on the county website for the library, something fun that they can do. And then something really delicious, In and Out, is have a reading program that we're going to be working here at the library. It'll go from March 4th to April 15th, and it's for ages 4 through 12. And you can come see the library for some details and some nice treats and rewards with that. And then also in April, we're looking at another STEAM craft with parachutes on the 8th. On the 11th, we're going to have an Easter Bunny around. On the April 15th, we're going to be having a puppet show on a Saturday. And then the 22nd of April, we're going to have a celebration, Day of the Child, a DIA. It's going to be, we're have a bilingual story time for both English and Spanish, and some other fun events going on. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you there.
Is there anyone else? No one else? You missed a golden opportunity. Okay. Number 9 is public hearings. There being none, we'll move on to, I'm sorry?
No.
Consent calendar.
Consent calendar.
Huh?
The consent calendar.
Oh, well, we've got the consent calendar. Well, that's important. Right by 8. 8, consent calendar. Waive all readings of ordinance and the resolution except by title. B, approval of warrants. C, approval of minutes of February 14th, 2017 meeting. D, approval of memorandum of understanding with Stanislaw Business Alliance, Opportunity Stanislaw, and authorize the city manager to execute said document. E, adopt resolution number 2017, next number, declaring certain personal property surplus property and authorizing disposal and/or sale of property.
I move that we approve the consent calendar as read.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Now, public hearing. There being none tonight, We'll move on to 10, which is regular business. And tonight we have a marijuana regulation workshop, and I think the presentation will be made by...
Thank you, Mayor and staff and council members. We do have a presentation for you tonight. As the city manager expressed at the last meeting, we have been asked to present the council with a bit of a history on a few regulations that have occurred recently as it relates to marijuana, both medical and recreational. And really the purpose is to provide the council with background on recent laws that have been passed and hopefully get direction from the council on what they would like to do as it relates in particular to recreational marijuana based on the passage of Prop 64. So to give you a little bit of context, I'll provide an outline of the workshop format that we're going to have tonight. And it's really to go through the history of marijuana regulation at all levels, federal, state, and local. Then really hone in on issues related to marijuana regulation under the Adult Use of Marijuana Act, which is Prop 64. Then we're going to discuss local policy issues and current ordinances in place, and then finish up with a discussion and direction from the council on these particular issues. So if we start from the beginning and we're talking about federal law, marijuana is still an illegal Schedule I narcotic, and that doesn't change under anything that's passed recently. And really, I guess to give you some context, what makes a narcotic a Schedule I narcotic is that the federal government has determined that there is no accepted medical application and cannot be used safely even under a doctor's supervision. So despite several states still regulating medical and recreational marijuana, it is still illegal under federal law. And there's a lot of, I would say that the environment right now around the country is one of uncertainty based on a transition of the administration and different states passing various different components for recreational or medical. And unfortunately for a lot of the people who are involved in it, it created a lot of uncertainty on whether or not they can participate in it recreationally, open up businesses, or even get permits from local entities. So as we focus in a little bit closer to home at the state level, just for context, medical marijuana has been legal per se at the state level for a number of years. The Compassionate Use Act passed in 1996 started off this progression towards decriminalizing or providing immunity for patients and primary caregivers for possession and cultivation only with a recommendation. And I believe the council would be familiar with SB 420, which is really what started triggering this medical marijuana program back in the early 2000s. And that created this voluntary identification card program in which you had primary caregivers and patients start to come out of the shadows in terms of marijuana usage and distribution and exchange. And this really created this collective and cooperative environment in which a lot of jurisdictions around the state actually started regulating it. Most recently, in 2015, the council might recall there was this originally formatted as MRSA, which has now changed, the acronyms have changed, but it's basically the same law, and it established a series of 3 different bills, Assembly bills and Senate bills, that really creates a licensing structure for a state and a local structure for medical marijuana. And what the legislature did in passing these bills, it created an oversight through the Department of Consumer Affairs to regulate everything having to do with medical marijuana at the state level. And it creates the possibility for licenses for the cultivation, distribution, dispensation of medical marijuana. Now, at this point, at the point that MRSA originally was passed, it was limited, and it is still only limited to medical marijuana. And as part of that original legislation, it recognized that local authorities and agencies had the power to levy taxes and establish fees and regulating these types of businesses. Things are a little bit different now because of the interplay between MRSA and Prop 64, and we'll go into that in a little bit later. But this provides context for the council to understand where the regulation started and where it's going. So, in relation to MRSA, if we're looking at it a little bit more in depth, it allows for personal cultivation within a certain scheme. Allows 100 square feet of growing space per patient with collective gardens for up to 5 patients. And the most important thing that's come out from MRSA, it's the creation of different licenses. And these licenses, there are 18 different types of licenses, but they range from cultivation, manufacturing, transportation, distribution, for any type of commercial marijuana business. Again, this is under the context of medical marijuana. But MRSA also includes regulation for local control. And this is something that the council did avail itself in 2016, and we'll talk about that, in terms of banning personal cultivation, commercial business, basically just banning medical marijuana across the board if it's so desired. And a lot of jurisdictions have either put bans in place or have established the framework for regulation of medical marijuana. Now, let's fast forward to 2016 and ALMA, which is the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. This ballot initiative was passed at the November election, and here are just a few points about what it actually does. So, it legalizes possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana under state law, only by adults 21 or older. So there might be a misnomer by people in the public that this is, allows 18 and under individuals who are 18 and younger from possessing marijuana. The law still restricts it 21 and over. And this is the next point is actually particularly important for the council to be aware of, because this is something that will impact what the city can regulate and what it can't. ALMA legalizes cultivation of up to 6 plants for personal use. And so we're going to talk about that specifically in the context of the city and what the city council can regulate, because if the council remembers, the ban that's in place currently bans all cultivation for all types of uses. The ALMA Act designates state agencies to license starting in 2018 and regulate the marijuana industry. So I can tell you that right now at the state level, we're tracking the department and stakeholder meetings, and things, as you can imagine, are going a little bit slower than anticipated. So the licensing structure is still being developed. The regs are still being developed. They're hopeful, I think, that they still are going to be able to meet those deadlines, but it's still in flux. So again, there might be a perception out in the public that because ALMA passed, people can either open up businesses or just maybe smoke on the street. All of that is not correct, and there's still a lot of things that still have to be fleshed out in order to be put into place. Under ALMA, it permits that adults 21 and over to purchase marijuana at state licensed businesses or through their delivery services. So again, you can't just necessarily buy marijuana or cannabis at any site and be covered under ALMA. So again, that's another point that needs to be made. And similar to what I discussed previously for MRSA, it does create license types for commercial marijuana businesses. So it's basically the same type of licenses. And if you think about the cultivation and production of marijuana or cannabis, these are different stages. It could be from testing marijuana, it could be delivering marijuana, it's cultivation, obviously, and then dispensing. So all types of licenses that the state is going to regulate. And ALMA then also imposes a state excise tax of 15% on all retail sales of marijuana, and actually calls out based on per ounce of flower and per ounce of leaves. So there, for your reference, are the dollar amounts that under ALMA the state is now going to collect for the retail sales of marijuana. So what we're really here to discuss is the implications for Newman and how ALMA should be, at least at this point, discussed in what the council wants to move forward in terms of regulation. So what we're focusing on is local control. Under ALMA, local governments still has options. Local governments can either completely prohibit or ban all types of recreational marijuana uses, sales, and businesses, or it can regulate and license commercial non-medical marijuana activities. Again, so it could be one or the other. Cities and counties may impose certain taxes on facilities for cultivating, manufacturing, processing, selling, distributing, all the uses you can think of as it relates to marijuana, but I have further slides that will go into the specifics of what can and cannot be taxed and different amounts and different things for the council's consideration. So this is the slide that I was mentioning. If you look on the left-hand side of the slide, as it applies to non-medical, so we're talking recreational, ALMA establishes a 7.25% sales and use tax for non-medical marijuana. If you look at the right-hand side, you look at different categories that apply to both medical and non-medical, depending on if we're looking at MRSA, if we're looking at ALMA. But the general application of this is that the state has allowed for 15% of gross receipts of retail sales as a state excise tax, and that applies, again, to both medical and non-medical. And the cultivation tax, as I mentioned before, is $9.25 per ounce for flowers and $2.75 per ounce for leaves. What's a little bit more, I think, applicable at the local level are the two items on the bottom. Local excise tax, the state has allowed, the ALMA specifically, has allowed for some discretion for local excise taxes. Of course, the process of establishing those taxes have to be approved by voters in order for it to be put in place. And then when we're talking fees and not necessarily taxes, the law does provide local agencies from establishing fees, but it's really meant to cover the administrative costs of registering businesses, everything you can think of as it relates to providing permits and review, staff time, things of that nature. The interesting component of ALMA that I think may still yet have to be resolved in courts is that the law, as it's stated right now, says that a local agency may pass reasonable regulations and these reasonable fees. Well, the question is, well, reasonable to whom and under what circumstances? So that is one thing that is still not necessarily clear. Again, the regulations have not been put in place yet, and so we anticipate that there will probably be litigation regarding that in the near future. So we've talked about the federal level, state, local history of medical marijuana regulation. And I mentioned before, the main purpose of the presentation and this workshop is to discuss how it applies to Newman. So if the council remembers, back in 2016, in response to MRSA, the council did pass an ordinance that bans all commercial cannabis. Basically, and again, the terms are used interchangeably. Cannabis, marijuana, for the most part, for all of our purposes, it's the same thing. This ordinance bans everything across the board. It's an all-right ban. It bans cultivation, dispensaries, transportation, manufacturing, delivery, testing, and processing. So everything you can think of as it relates to marijuana, it's currently banned. It also specifically bans deliveries of medical cannabis, which is a concern in a lot of communities that don't allow for dispensaries. There may be delivery services from third parties that still come into town to deliver marijuana to patients, and in this case under the medical context, and there is a policy rationale for banning those transportation services. And things that we've heard in the past from other communities are a lot of concerns about these particular businesses either driving around in vans or trucks, vehicles that have identify what they do and what they have, and that might attract potential dangers and crime associated with that. So as a result of that, a lot of communities, just like Newman has, they've banned all deliveries of medical cannabis. The ordinance also prohibits all activities for which a state license is required, and that, I think, was more perspective in terms of what the city can ban, knowing full well that at this point, it was pretty clear that Prop 64 or something of a similar nature was going to make it on the ballot. And the last point here is that the ordinance specifically addresses the regulatory scheme we're now under. It prohibits possible future recreational use. So that's already covered under the current ordinance. Now, there needs to be a discussion moving forward on what the council would like to do with certain aspects of ALMA, but for the overall picture, the ordinance does prohibit recreational use as it currently stands. The other applicable ordinances that are in place are that under the municipal code, there are provisions for prohibiting licenses or uses for any type of medical marijuana collective or dispensaries or any other commercial cannabis activity. So that, again, is also in place. And this was really, again, as a result of the council's deliberation and consideration of MRSA when it was first passed and in direct response to it. This code also prohibits approval of licenses for all of these categories that we've already talked about: distribution, cultivation, manufacturing, transportation of cannabis. So moving now to things that need to be considered, pending issues related to marijuana regulation. We get a lot of questions frequently about, well, what's next? What's going to happen next? We can say that at the federal level, interestingly, I was actually just listening to this morning to Attorney General Sessions speak to the group of attorney generals from around the country about the policies now that the Trump administration is moving forward on as it relates to drug enforcement. And the enforcement is really focused on recreational marijuana. I believe it was last week that the press secretary went on record as saying that the Trump administration isn't necessarily going to go after the medical marijuana community, but it is very clear that there's at least going to be more pushback for this recreational marijuana increase that's happened across the country, with a lot of states passing recreational and allowing for those uses. So this creates, again, some clarity, but also some confusion as to how far they're going to push and how much they're actually going to regulate and push back on those states that do regulate it. At the state level, as I mentioned, ALMA's passed and MRSA's passed, but there are still regulations and licensing schemes that need to be put in place. And the goal right now is to have that all established by 2018. And that's still moving forward. So there's a lot of stakeholder meetings going on right now in Sacramento related to these two laws. And I mentioned also, a lot of this still has to be clarified. There's still a lot of uncertainties and confusion about the specific terms that are used in the law. I mentioned before, reasonably regulate. That, again, probably may have to go to court and be adjudicated by the courts to determine what's reasonable and what's not. And at the local level, really in response to ALMA, which is what we're here to discuss, is a discussion about updating the municipal code on how to address ALMA and whether or not there should be rules in place for regulating recreational use at the personal level. The city can't outright ban it, but it can regulate its uses, and a discussion of policy for recreational marijuana at the city level. Right now there is a ban in place, and so part of the discussion is do the circumstances warrant a new discussion as to medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, and how to regulate it, ban it, allow it, tax it. All of those things really fall into play at that point. Looking at particular policy issues, I wanted to just point out this chart that we have, and I think it clarifies a few things. When you're looking in the medical context and the recreational context, you really focus on two subcategories: personal cultivation and commercial. In the personal cultivation context, MRSA allows local agencies to ban or to regulate it. As I mentioned before, right now there is a ban in place under the ordinance. For recreational, ALMA allows only a regulation of personal cultivation. As I mentioned before, when we were looking at the slide for ALMA, it now allows personal indoor cultivation up to 6 plants. So ALMA, in passing, now it prohibits local agencies from banning that. So that is something that does need to be addressed. It can be regulated, but it cannot be banned. So that's one big component of why we're here and why we wanted to discuss this. For commercial businesses, so again, those categories we talked about: manufacturing, dispensaries, cultivation, MRSA allows local agencies to ban, or they can regulate and tax. Right now, again, there is a ban in place, but that can be changed if the council so desires. Under ALMA, it's the same thing. Commercial businesses related to marijuana can either be banned or they can be regulated and taxed. One caveat to all of this is that under ALMA, if a city decides to ban commercial cultivation or personal outdoor cultivation, which is different than indoor cultivation, if it regulates all of these different things, it is ineligible to receive state grant monies funded through the new excise tax. So we talked about the excise tax. Once the state starts collecting all of these monies, it's under the laws laid out different categories of where this money is going to go. A lot of it, I believe it's slated to go for law enforcement and education. Cities that ban these types of uses will not be eligible to receive those funds. So that is something that is in place and something for the council's consideration. So as part of an overall discussion about marijuana in general, things that the council has already considered, I wanted to bring a few things to its attention in terms of the different departments that the city has. And these are concerns not necessarily specifically tailored to Newman or things that we've heard or situations that have occurred, but it's more global. These types of concerns fall into different categories, and that's why they've been classified that way. But generally speaking, as it relates to marijuana, you have a lot of concerns in the fire department context because you have fire departments and personnel that are called out for, fires or different types of incidents. But when you have communities that have marijuana businesses, marijuana grows, there is always an underlying concern of, is this operation even legal? And again, we all know that despite all of these regulations and these laws passing, marijuana cultivation, dispensation, transportation, or use is still illegal federally. So we're talking about, well, it's illegal federally, but it might be legal under state law. It might be legal under ALMA. Maybe there's a permit, maybe there's not. So this creates a problem for staff, particularly not knowing whether something is legal or not, as it relates to a particular grow or a particular business. Other concerns that have come up are in the context of cultivation and manufacturing is you have operators who for many years have been operating in the shadows and all of a sudden are starting to get regulated and get permits, but they're still not necessarily running their operations the way most businesses do to make sure that they're still meeting safety standards and building codes. So these are all things that are still a problem and probably will still be a problem for a while if you regulate marijuana in any context. Concerns that we see that relate to the police department in general are things we've already discussed. Is the potential increase for crime. And we've divided this in different categories. If we look at dispensaries, they are particular targets because they have large quantities of cash. And something that was included on a previous slide is that because of a federal ban, there's still a lot of uncertainty on how these businesses can operate with money. They can't necessarily have bank accounts. Usually when banks find out that a certain business is operating a marijuana business of any sort, they will shut them down and they will not let them have funds in that particular bank or any accounts. So a lot of these businesses are running off of cash and they have large amounts of cash at their disposal and makes them easy targets. A lot of these locations need significantly heightened security systems to ensure customer safety and employee safety. So these, again, things that are going to be regulated, but that are still of a concern to our first responders. There's concerns about deliveries and how they occur, and risks really to people who are delivering and receiving marijuana. Again, I mentioned this as an example before. Cars are targets. You have cars that are being used for transportation purposes, and they're identified as such, or even if they're not identified as such, criminals still find opportunities to track these services, and potentially leads to increased danger to patients, neighbors, and the surrounding community. So these are, again, typical concerns that have been raised by police departments around the state as it relates to marijuana. But it also applies to other departments. And in the context of planning, when you have concerns really that are centered around zoning restrictions, which zones are appropriate for what use, are businesses, marijuana businesses located, where are they located? Are they located, can they be located near schools? Can they be located near churches? All of these things fall into play. One interesting thing about Alma and MRSA, it does provide for specific restrictions on where these businesses can go, but at the local level, it's still a concern on how at the local level, the policymakers can decide where things are going to go and how close they want things to other businesses, how, if they wanted it in industrial areas, do you want it in your residential? All these things come into play in the planning context. And then finally, on permitting issues, there have to be new systems put in place and applications and staff to address all of those particular components. So you're adding an additional administration and enforcement context to what is already, in a lot of cases, a strapped staff that would normally not have to deal with that, but now have to because of the new laws and possible regulations. So those, again, were all just general categories of things that have come up in terms of marijuana regulation. So the items for discussion tonight.
Lydia,
Yes.
just real quick. I just want to update them on the countywide system that we're
Yes.
talking about. So another historical aspect that you need to take into consideration. The mayor and I have joined Supervisor Chiesa and a countywide group that has representatives from each of the 9 cities and the county there. And what the talk is about having a countywide regulatory system where we're all doing the same thing. And that includes respecting other agencies that want to ban, and then if somebody does want it, to be sharing any of the taxes that could be generated, and then spread that out locally through whatever method comes about. It could be per capita, it could be different. There's different ways of distributing that to the law enforcement agencies in all the communities. The thought is whether or not they buy it in Newman, Patterson, or Turlock, and only one of those 3, the other 2 communities that don't have one are going to feel the impact. People from Newman will go to a different community to buy and bring it back to our community, and we're going to feel the impacts. So therefore, how do we get on a countywide basis to kind of share in any kind of tax revenues? Because we're all going to feel the impact. So it's at the very early stages, and the mayor and I will continue to meet with them and update you as this goes along. Thank you.
So tying that in for the real points of discussion for tonight's meeting is, in particular, Alma as it relates to indoor cultivation for non-medical marijuana for personal use. As I mentioned before, Alma now prohibits local agencies from banning indoor cultivation up to 6 plants. But the question is, should the city have something in place to track personal cultivation? Should the city have regulations on how personal cultivations, indoor cultivations are kept? What types of machinery? Should there be a permitting system? So these are all things that we're hoping to get direction from the council to come back with potentially an ordinance or modified ordinance to address this. a discussion about regulating or banning outdoor cultivation of non-medical marijuana. So again, that is indoor ban, and indoor cultivation cannot be banned. We can regulate, but we can't ban. Outdoor cultivation can be banned, or it can be regulated. So that's another point of discussion. The third one is, should the city enact business regulations for medical or non-medical marijuana businesses? That's more of a general question, if the council wants to discuss that. If you want to enact those types of regulations, what type of land use regulations? And that's what I talked about before, but how close do you want a particular marijuana business to be located in a particular zone? Not too close to residential, maybe closer to specific uses, considerations of churches and schools. So that really only comes up in the context if the council actually wants to regulate and allow those uses. Then again, if the council decides that that's a route it wants to go, a discussion about local taxes and whether or not that is part of the component in order to receive some benefit from the new uses. And again, Michael did address the countywide discussion related to proposed regulations. So that's something that's still ongoing and the city has already begun addressing. So that's basically the presentation, and those, I'll go back to the items that we have for discussion, but I'm free to and happy to answer any questions that council might
I
have.
think the biggest thing is going with the joint committee that you're talking about. But as far as my viewpoint for the city, I think that outdoor grows need to be banned. Indoor grows are obviously okay, but they need to be permitted and regulated inspections by the fire department so that they know that they're within electrical code and growing properly and not a fire hazard to the residents in that residence or the neighbors next door.
And there's two, and Councilmember Graham, there's two trains of thought on that. Even two of our sister cities here in the county have taken different perspectives on this. The city of Waterford went through the regulatory process and saying, okay, if you're allowed to grow 6, but you have to get a permit. It has to be inspected, like you say, you have to get building permits and pay the regulatory fees that go along with it. The flip side of that is the city of Turlock just said, we're not going to regulate it because it's still against federal law. So therefore, we're not going to do anything contrary to federal law. So, there's really just two communities that are 30 miles apart have taken different options. And those are the options that we're trying to show you both sides of what you need to think about and hopefully provide us direction on what you think is the most appropriate course for the city of Newman. And you're correct, Councilmember Graham, that there are life, health, and safety issues that go along with it. It's something that's going to take place. It's allowed in the community under UMA. But, if there's life, health, and safety issues, not only for the participants and the occupants, but also for fire department and also for police department as well. So, and those are simple things of what kind of chemicals are being stored on site, making sure that whatever they do, any modifications to any electrical and everything else is identified. The police department, if they're going there, they need to know what they're getting themselves into in the possible grow if they get a call out to that situation.
We also have water issues with all those chemicals and that kind of thing.
That's correct. Correct. Yeah.
Water and sewer.
Yeah. So anyways, that's something for a discussion.
With the risk hazards of the lighting and ventilation system and how they wire some of those things that I've seen from working in law enforcement, it's very dangerous, easily cause fires. I think staying away from it just because it's federal law might be dangerous because California is going to push forward with it, and if the federal government doesn't step in and stop the regulation by states, then it'll be legal here and it'll be being done. So I'd rather have some sort of regulations in place for the safety of neighbors and people, the residents themselves, to protect them in case it does go forward.
And another thing is that I think that it is great that you're stepping out in front of this situation simply because it's becoming nationwide. As a small city like Newman and here on the west side, I think that it is appropriate that we get ahead of the game Because if not, as we grow here, if we don't catch a hold of this, we're going to, face serious problems. So I concur with you in terms of the committee that you guys, you and the mayor are stepping into. I think it's going to, benefit this city and all the cities that, hook into this.
I think one of the offshoots that we're also, I think legal still looking into it. When I went to the League of California Cities, my question to them was, if you do regulate it and you do require permits and all of that, is that information subject to Public Records Act request? So I think that they didn't have an answer for me when I asked that question, and I don't know that our city attorney does at this point. I think that's one of those gray areas that probably still trying to work out. But, that's not necessarily information that, you hope gets out there. But
I wondered, what kind of timeline are we operating under here? How rapidly do we have to approach this? Do we have sufficient time to really look at this issue with a reasonable mind?
I think it depends on which aspect of Alma you're looking at. If you're looking at the personal indoor grow, that's allowed. And there isn't any state regulations that are going to be developed. That's really at the local level. So I would say the sooner the better if the city wants to regulate that component. For recreational on a bigger scale, commercial and manufacturing distribution, again, the state is still developing those regulations. I will say that there are a lot of communities around the state that have pushed forward, and there's been a lot of discussion of certain cities already issuing permits at the local level, which does scare, and I would say probably raises concerns for a lot of cities around the state, because there seems to be this push to try to benefit from this as much as possible, as quickly as possible. One thing that I didn't mention, under MRSA, for medical marijuana, if a business wants to open up for testing, for distribution, for dispensing, they need to obtain both a local and a state permit. There's a permitting system for the two. They have to get both in order to be able to operate. However, under Alma, there's no such requirement. So if you have a business that wants to deliver, for example, let's say deliver recreational marijuana, it doesn't need to obtain a permit from any locality. It only needs to obtain one from the state, which again then also raises all types of concerns with the uses being, with businesses going into place without any local regulation. So again, I would say even though the regulations are still being developed, that is something the council should think about moving forward on the recreational side as well.
And I think it's going to be very important that we designate certain areas that if we happen to go with anybody opening up a business here in the city of Newman, that it is, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of school, churches, or even in a residential area, that there should be a designated area for that type of business. That's my personal opinion.
One other question relates to the actual use of marijuana. We've had a situation in my neighborhood next door. It's a rental unit. People are no longer there. But they would smoke marijuana in the backyard because I know what marijuana smells like. As a teacher, I've been exposed to the training for that. And it permeates the house and my backyard, which is an invasion of my privacy. And so that's an issue that we're going to have to address. It's just like the ban on smoking in the state of California. What do you do? How do you regulate that? And that's going to get nasty.
yeah, some of the clarification, and that's a very good point, Councilmember Day, and I think that's, from the people I've talked to in the public, that's a lot of their concern. There is some misnomers. You cannot legally smoke marijuana in public space. A front yard is considered public space, so people cannot smoke their recreational marijuana in their front yard. They can't smoke it downtown. There are some things, but you're exactly right. Inside of a house or technically behind a fence in a backyard is not considered public space. So therefore, my understanding is that is a legal place to do that. So I know there are impacts on neighbors, and especially neighborhoods where, there's families.
Children.
Yeah. So, it's
At
gonna
what
be
point does that become a nuisance, though?
Yeah, I'm going to have to defer to the city attorney, and it's probably something that's probably going to have to be litigated at some point, but
It most likely will, because again, the big gray area under Alma right now is what is a reasonable regulation. So, for example, if a city council determines that a reasonable regulation of personal marijuana use prohibits somebody from smoking within 10 feet of a boundary line, for example. Well, reasonable to whom? And that is, again, the gray area that the law is not really accounted for and most likely will lead to litigation for clarification on what that means.
one of the other things I think, and I'm not sure, maybe our city attorney can, is you spoke about rentals, can we regulate or require a property owner to sign off on any personal indoor grows if we're going to regulate it? So that's probably something we
Rental
should,
property. Yeah, that's
look into and making
Yes.
sure that gets answered, as well as if the council so elects to regulate indoor bans, that could potentially be another thing there, because having the landlord sign off on any kind of permit that would be there.
no, that's a great valid point. I absolutely agree with that.
No, I really like what Casey had to say, that, if we can ban the outdoor marijuana, that we know we can do that because that's legal. The indoor, we're stuck with that. The only thing we can do is regulate it.
Correct.
And I don't know what the position is of the council, but I know from the laws that what we passed before indicates that we're very conservative in this city when it comes to marijuana. And I've yet to find one good thing about marijuana other than what maybe medical marijuana for those people that have some issues, it helps. But as far as recreational, it's going to be a nightmare for everyone. Police chiefs is going to enforcement and that sort of thing. It breaks my heart to see it, but this is what the will of the people of California. They voted for it and it passed. Come 2018, January, it'll be law in the state of California, unless the federal government says otherwise. So,
But don't the cities have jurisdiction in terms of setting regulations?
It does. The local agencies do, but only under Alma, only for regulating indoor cultivation for personal use. It can regulate it, it can't ban it. So that, under the law, people can grow up to 6 plants indoors. A city can ban outdoor cultivation outright, and that's what the mayor was discussing. So it depends on the context.
So for me, I'm all for banning, obviously, any commercial sales, transportation, and outdoor grows, and definitely permits on indoor cultivation.
I agree with
And-
Casey.
And looking into that possibly boundary.
There's, excuse me, and I'm not really sure, I don't recall who I've spoken to, but it was someone in the legal realm, that testing is another area that people are starting to really look into. So you don't have to answer now, but that, is that an area that you want to consider banning too, is where somebody comes in, it gets tested and it leaves. They're not big batches, there's no distribution or any of that. So it's an area that we don't tend to think about, but if you want all commercial ban, that would include testing as well. So.
Yeah, I'm for that. To me, that'd be part of the sales process.
Nubia, may I ask a clarification question? If I see the council's direction towards outdoor grows and banning that, and you mentioned earlier about the state tax and funding for law enforcement, if a local agency was to ban, would that, if we banned outdoor but allowed indoor, would we fall under that and not receive state money?
Well, there's no there's no leeway on allowing indoor, because the law allows indoor personal cultivation. I don't see a scenario in which this could happen where a city would say, well, we're going to ban all outdoor grows, but we're going to allow indoor cultivation. Then arguably you'd say, yes, that jurisdiction could still avail itself of state monies under that category. But it sounds like that's not, it would depend on the council's direction on that. But if there's anything that bans all these uses, the cities won't be able to avail themselves of those state funds under ALMA.
Yeah, and we may want clarification because the League of California Cities at the workshop I attended indicated if you ban outdoor cultivation, you're not eligible for grant monies.
That was my understanding.
Right.
And I
Correct.
think.
Yeah, if you ban any
Yeah, you ban
any
anything,
portion
yeah.
of, you could have
Right.
commercial dispensaries and you can have everything else, but only ban outdoor cultivation, you're not eligible.
Right.
If you ban any
Any-
piece of it.
Banning any portion of any of those categories, it's out.
Sticky problem.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. So Mayor, tonight we brought you this workshop, and thank you, Ubia, for doing that for us, because we're kind of looking for a general consensus from you of what direction you would like us to go in preparing an ordinance for you, and starting to do a little bit of research for you. It's going to take us 30 to 45 days to get something back in front of you. That's why we wanted to have that conversation today and see what your general direction is. So that way, Newbie and I can work together to craft something to get it in front of you here, probably in early April.
I
Well,
think Casey's approach is probably the direction we want to
and,
pursue
and,
at this point.
and it's legal now. So people are able to grow it now in their house, and there's no limitation. So I think there's a safety issue there. And before we even see any kind of grant money even potentially coming in, that stuff's not going to be in effect until 2018, and then it's going to take time for that money even to turn around. So if we see a potential or change our minds at that time, we could always change some of that stuff.
And Councilmember Graham, we all understand how much state grant money comes to the Central Valley
Right,
as opposed to the other places, so.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter.
exactly.
I mean, what we're gonna get, a couple of nickels or something?
Maybe.
Maybe if Uncle Sugar decides, if Moonbeam decides.
So I hear a consensus for the most part on regulating indoor personal cultivation. Is there any direction on whether to, it sounds like it's banned all across the board for everything else. Is that correct? So no further discussion on potentially regulating anything?
No sales.
I'd like to follow Turlock's rule, path, but I don't know if we can. Personally, that's my personal opinion. Ban the whole damn thing.
Well, Turlock's not banning the whole thing. They just aren't doing anything at all.
Right.
Yeah, they're just not,
They're just not gonna do anything?
they're just not
No.
gonna do anything. They're banning, you cannot ban
Personal. indoor.
personal growth
You cannot,
indoor.
No.
no, okay.
That's by law.
You're okay, you can still.
So you can only give reasonable regulations for the 6 plants
Right.
that are allowed under UMA. And it's 6 plants per property, not per person.
Correct.
Well, then
So that-
I concur with Casey's.
I think, Michael, you can craft something with this young lady here, our good lawyer, that you know what the feeling is of the council, and you know the direction we want to
Okay.
go in.
Yeah, and we wanted,
And yeah.
our discussion anticipated that this was something that you would want, but we didn't know on the regulation or ban on the on the personal stuff, so we got clear direction. We can come back to you probably first meeting in April and have something in front of you for you to go ahead and start with the process and decide on which direction to go. And we'll work with both our police department and our fire department because they both have very valid concerns.
And plan.
We won't reinvent the wheel. There's other cities that are already doing great things to take care of this. And then along with that ordinance, there'll ultimately be a fee structure because there would be a permit that's going to ensue with respect to having to do the correct inspections and making sure people aren't growing more than 6 plants and all of those things. Again, it's a public health and safety issue, not only for our first responders, but for the residents of the immediate household as well as the neighboring households.
So-
Then the one piece I did bring up, and I'm hoping to get maybe direction on, if permitted, renters are required to get property owner consent to grow in that rental unit. Is that
Yes.
kind of the
Yeah.
general consensus on there?
Yeah.
That-
Yes.
Okay. We wanted to make sure, and then if permitted, we will include that as part of our regulation for indoor cultivation.
So if someone is growing marijuana right now, do we know if they're growing it?
No.
So,
You're safe, Leroy.
that's something you don't have to worry about. Those days are over with me. So someone that's growing it now is doing it illegal, as far as we're concerned.
It depends on the context, because under a medical marijuana structure, well, it depends on your definition of legal. At the federal level, it's all illegal. At the state level, primary caregivers and patients can, well, in certain contexts, have possession of a certain number of plants or immature plants for their medical use. Right now, in Newman, there is an outright ban on everything. So, yes, in that context, it would be illegal.
Michael, are there limitations on the fees and permitting and everything?
They have to be reasonable and they have to be justified.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll work with our finance director and our personnel in both public safety as well as code enforcement, all the other people, and figure out what the cost of delivering the service is, and then that's what the fee will equal.
What about,
That's the administrative fee that we
Correct.
go on.
Correct.
What ab-
85% or something. Something reasonable.
You can't have a situation in which the city is receiving a bountiful, plentiful amount of money for regulating
No, we
indoor
just want to pay for
cultivation.
the extra officer that it
That's
would
right.
take,
We need
and
to
the
pay for
extra
more
safety
officers on the
equipment for the fire department, and the
And
extra
that-
person in code enforcement that would be necessary to support the regulations.
what about the
It's not
penalty
unreasonable.
structure for
That'll be a part of it as well, for
Part-
not getting a
Penalties.
proper
the muni code
permit.
violation at that point? What would that,
Right,
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and those fall along the same health and safety, welfare statutes
Right.
that allow for penalties of violation of a municipal
Fa-
code.
Right, failure to get permits and,
Correct.
That's-
Fines, that's- yes.
yeah, fine.
Yeah, and the other thing we'll look at is if somebody is cultivating personal and do not get a permit and then do cause a structure fire, then we'll see about recouping all those costs that are associated with delivering service to put out the fire that was caused by an illegal operation. So we'll work with our city attorneys on that. So there's still a lot of legal issues that would have to
Right.
be discussed, but if we can work that in, we'll work that in as well.
Perfect. Sounds like we got direction.
Thank you. Thank you to our city
Thank you.
attorney.
Thank you for a great presentation.
Yeah, this was very helpful.
I
Thank
tell you something, it sheds a lot of light on things that we don't want to know about. It's required.
Yep.
so, yeah.
We're-
Item B, he's B.
I'm just waiting for you to read it.
You're waiting for the next, okay. Okay. We'll go
10B.
to regular, item B, report on Newman Crow's Landing Unified School District event at Downtown Plaza.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Before you tonight is the Newman Crow's Landing Unified School District request to have the Downtown Plaza on August 5th, 2017, from 8:30 a.m. until noon to provide the back-to-school information. They have partnered with the Family Resource Center to provide information to the community about specific school as well as resource information that's out there. This will be their third year doing it. They have requested the following downtown standards be waived. exclusive use of the downtown plaza, use of the plaza restrooms and facilities, electrical power and location, waive standards for the following events, or following items, cleanup deposit. We currently ask for $1,000, but they assure us that the children that they have working there will keep it clean, as they have in the past. The business license for vendors be waived. Insurance reduction from $3 million to $1 million. And city as an additional insured party. Traffic and crowd control, they plan on blocking off the west end of the parking lot. No streets, but the west end of the plaza parking lot. Amplified music from that hour, we currently state 10 a.m. and they want to start amplified music at 8:30. And restroom and electrical power use fees of $25. There will be no alcohol at the event, and I'll bring it back to you. You can approve the event as indicated, waiving the requested standards, approve the event with the standards intact, or reject the event in its entirety. Staff recommends you select option number 1. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay. And bring it back to council for direction.
I move that we approve the event as indicated, waiving the request standards.
And I second that.
A motion's been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. C, adopt resolution number 2017, next number. A resolution accepting the proposal for audit service and authorizing city manager to sign an agreement. Lou?
Evening, Mayor and council members. Our 5-year contract with our current auditors, Clinton and Byrd, has expired, and over the years, they've performed a very thorough review of our finances. Since our contract has ended, staff sent out a request for proposals for audit services to 16 firms which are certified to audit government agencies. 5 of them responded, 4 provided bid amounts, and 1 declined to bid, stating that they had a full workload. The Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA, provides a best practices for procuring audit services. Some of the items that they recommend are having a multi-year contract with the firms, also that an automatic renewal of contract is not recommended, but it is recommended to seek qualified auditors, including the current auditor, as long as their performance has been satisfactory. The principal factor should not be price, but once you've determined that those that are qualified, you can use price as a factor. Each of the firms that bid are qualified to perform audits. And I'd like to point out that of the prices that are bid on there, you'll find that there are 2 that are $28,000 and $30,000. The other 3 are anywhere from $10,000 to $21,000 more than that. After reviewing their proposals, I didn't find anything in their proposals that would justify nearly double the price in some cases. They're not going to perform a double audit. So after reviewing these and comparing the fees, and looking at Clendon and Byrd, which has been on our list for a while, they have been our auditor for the last 11 years. And while they've done a fantastic job, there are reasons why cities change auditors. And one of them is to show the city's financial strength. If we only had one auditor that was reviewing our financials forever, people would begin to question, are they really that good? But if we've had several different firms look at our books over the years and have all determined that our financials are strong, that brings a lot more weight to our financial department. So while Clendon Byrd has been a good firm, we are recommending that we select R.J. Riccardi, which also previously was an auditor of ours 12 years ago, to be our auditor, and to authorize the city manager to sign a contract with them. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions from the council?
No?
Lou, have you used Riccardi in the past?
They were our audit firm here before I started.
How about your before here?
No, I've not, but I have seen their financials. I think they handled Patterson for a while, and they've also handled here before. I think they'll do a fine job. The way we can structure our contract is we can give them like a 3-year period and give the city manager the option to extend it on 1-year periods. So if we're not happy with them, we can change at that point. We don't have to stay 5 years with them.
Any other questions from the council?
No.
If not, I bring it back to the council for direction.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution 2017, a resolution accepting the proposal for audit services and authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement with R.J. Riccardi for audit services for the city of Newman.
Would you consider for 3 years with the option of 2-year extension?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
I'll second that then.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Thank you very much, Lou. D, adopt resolution number 2017, next number, a resolution nominating a candidate to represent Stanislaus County on the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. And who's
I got
making
this
that
one.
presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you deny is a request from the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District for you guys to nominate a candidate to represent the Air Board, or represent Stanislaus County on the Air Board's district's governing board. There are 2 candidates, and their applications are attached. What the district is asking that you do tonight is either nominate one or the other, or your third option would be to nominate neither one and say that you would abstain from that. So the 2 candidates are Chris Vieira from the city of Ceres, Mayor Chris Vieira, and Councilmember Dominic Farina from the city of Patterson.
I'd like to nominate Chris Vieira. I know he is, he's been on there a long time, and he's put many programs for.
And
Forward.
I'll second that because I looked at the qualifications, and Chris has spent quite a bit of time working with the air quality issues in the county, and so I think he'd be.
And I kind of agree with that, too, in reference to the qualifications, that he seems more qualified than the other candidate.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I'll bring it back to the council for direction. Chris Vieira has been selected by the council.
Correct.
All in favor?
This is actually a resolution for clarification.
resolution.
So we're
Yeah.
adopting a resolution
Okay.
appointing, or nominating Chris Vieira.
Okay.
Okay.
I propose we adopt a resolution, or didn't somebody do that?
Nope, you're doing it
No.
right now.
Oh, okay. Adopt a resolution number 2017, next in number, a resolution nominating Chris Vieira to represent Stanislaus County on the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District's governing board.
I'll second it.
Okay, a motion has been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 5-0. Thank you. Item 11, items from District 5 Stanislaus County Supervisor, Mr. Jim D. Martini, excuse me.
That sounds so professional. Mr.
Good evening, Mayor Martina, members of the council. I just have a few things for you tonight. As you know, there's still quite a bit of flooding here in Stanislaus County. The San Joaquin River is over its banks in many places, and we have numerous roads that are still closed. Yesterday, the floodgate at the Don Pedro Dam was closed down, which will lower the flow in the Tuolumne River from about 17,000 feet to about 11. This will relieve some flooding, but that the dam is like almost 99% full, so I think this is going to be a temporary reprieve. There's enough water and snow up in the mountains to completely fill the Don Pedro Dam if it was empty. So being 99% full, it's not very comforting. But anyway, we'll deal with it. Public Works has really been busy. I think our director said he spent $300,000 already in flood control, dealing with closed roads, excavators, we'll get through it, but we're not out of the woods yet on this. We still got a ways to go. TID had told us yesterday that if everything just doesn't rain anymore and everything goes along pretty smoothly, it'll take them 11,000 cubic feet a second until July to get the water level of the dam down, assuming the snow melt goes in at a reasonable level. We've never seen anything like this before. Anyway, that's where we're at. I'll try and keep you updated on this every meeting and where we're at. As I told you in the past, the Crow's Landing Air Base environmental impact report is just about done. Actually is, I think they're done now. I had the first briefing on it yesterday, and the specific plan, the environmental impact report will be out in about 2 weeks for public comment. So look for that, and if look it over, if you have any comments, that'd be the time to put it in. I believe it's a 45-day comment period, and the county staff will come out after the impact report is released. When you would like us to make a presentation, you just let us know. I talked to Keith Boggs about it yesterday, and he's happy to come out. We're making the same offer to the city of Patterson. We feel that Newman will be more impacted by the air base than Patterson, although I don't believe it's negatively impacted. But there's a lot of things to consider when you deal with a project that big. The county will start its first construction and development of the air base on the south end of the air base, because the other side's still in the floodplain, and there's a little bit more to be considered before that's developed. We expect it to take many years to develop, but we have to bring in roads, utilities, water, sewer. For us, it's about a $30 million project to be able to do this, so this will be phased in over time. But the environmental impact report is 6 months behind schedule, so it's but the briefing I got yesterday said that everything is done now. Okay, as far as the healthcare task force, the next meeting is March 16th in Augustine City Hall. The task force is still working on the health summit. The group wanted this time to have the summit in the evening. This has created some conflicts, with the West Side Theater, which is used a lot in the evenings. We're not at any kind of impasse. We just have to move our date around to come up with something. I'm going to send out messages to the task force tomorrow about this, whether or not we want to do this in June or later. I'm not really sure what to do, because the date that we had picked is theater is being used, and we're supposed to use the theater. So just that we have always done this event at noon when there's less chance of a conflict. So we'll pick a date, depending on what's available to you, and send out messages by no later than March 16th. We should have something down. So I don't know where we're going to go, but we would like to try it in the evening this time. And then the Stanislaus County Veterans Center is it's also, of course, running behind, a few weeks. Some of it was just we got a late start. Some of it was weather related. The grand opening, though, has been set. We just had a meeting last night. In fact, it was Newman's turn last night to have the meeting, but they felt because of the roads, so many roads closed, they had it in Modesto. But the grand opening is on April 21st at 3:30. The grand opening and the presentation will be done at 4 o'clock. So it's April 21st. 3:30 be the time to get there. And it's really quite a nice facility. I've been out there a couple of times. It's just nice. I think the veterans are going to be really proud of that. It's a place for meeting halls. It's got kitchen, banquet facilities, and it's just really nicely done too. So I invite you all out there on April 21st to have a look at it. And the only other comment I have, that was all my report. Since you brought up this marijuana, I have to say something about it. The Stanislaus County doesn't allow anything of this. The only one that's even interested in working on this thing at all is Vito Chiesa from Turlock District 2. Don't think you're going to make any money off of this if you do this. It's the cost of running these regulations is going to be more than what you ever get off of tax revenue. your cost of your code enforcement to inspect this stuff, your police and your fire department. And the unsavory people that are going to be in this type of business, they're not the kind of people who like paying taxes anyway. So I just see this as fraught with all kinds of problems. I don't see the county really jumping into this. And outdoor groves are just nothing but problems. I just really would recommend you stay away from that. The state of California wants to throw out a little bit of money, for this if you allow outdoor grows, but they are just going to be nothing but problems. And, you're going to have video gang activity and criminal activity out this, and it is just nothing good about this at all. And as you know, the banks can't take cash deposits off an illegal business, so you allow dispensaries in. I don't know what they're going to do with the cash because the banks won't take it. I talked to 2 different banks and they confirmed that. So, you're going to have a lot of criminal activity you've never had before dealing with this kind of stuff. And, our sheriff is against it. The district attorney told me that she was against it. And our ag commissioner, who has to regulate, pesticides and fungicides and stuff, just doesn't want anything to do with it either. In fact, there's nothing registered for marijuana. And so, I don't know. Be careful what you get into on this because we're very wary of it. We've had a parade of people who want to open up dispensaries. Most of them had long criminal records and unsavory people that I don't even want to be around, let alone give them a business license for something. It is, Class 1 narcotic. Federal government says it has no redeeming value. And really the best thing that could happen is the federal government step in and stop this nonsense. I don't know what we're going to do, but right now, everything's off the table. We don't allow anything. And there's growing, outdoor growing, there's dispensaries, there's testing, and then, I don't know, with the dispensaries, there's all kinds of different things. You don't have to allow any of it outside of letting people grow some in their house. And I know from my point of view, and I think probably the consensus of the supervisors is that we don't want our code enforcement bothered with something like this. We will never get enough money in revenue to pay for the cost of implementing this. So we haven't decided what we're going to do with this. My word to you is be careful what you do because this is not a good thing to be involved in. You're dealing with people who, have criminal records, who don't pay taxes. You've got an illegal business as far as the federal government is concerned, and there's, I don't believe any good outcome of this. So, okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Jim. I think you know that we feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
Don't think you're going to make any money off of this.
No. Banks won't take the money because they're federally insured. So it's federal law.
Thank you very much. 12, item from city manager and staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick things. You'll see some changes coming up at the firehouse. We're going to, through your mid-year budget, you approved the repainting of it. We're kind of looking back, and I don't think it's been repainted since we built it 30 years ago. So we picked a painter. We got 3 quotes, and we picked the lowest and considerably lower than the purchasing policy. So it's around $10,000 to get it painted. So, and it will have a look of a firehouse. So it'll have some red doors.
Could we save some money if Chief paints it?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but then my bunch of streaks in there might not look good.
We'll get him a sprayer.
Yeah. With that, I know that the chief is working on, again, in the mid-year budget, you authorize some funding to have some per diem staffing. He's working on a program and developing a program and standards that are necessary for people to do that. So we're hoping to have something for you in the next 30 to 60 days for you to hurry up and bless. I know he's had conversations with West End, and they're very interested in the same program, so it's another partnership kind of situation here that whereby, you know, the person can go out to a West End call. It's also going to free up our chief to do a few more things there by having someone else do some of the daily work around the firehouse that he doesn't necessarily have time to, so it'll be good for us, I think. I did talk to, excuse me, Mr. Boggs from the county with respect to Crow's Landing. We've had a conversation. What we'd like to do is maybe just set aside an afternoon here in a council room, in a conference room, and then just have you guys pick an hour or two that you can come in and get like a more of a one-on-one kind of conversation going. Then we'd have up to 2 people that could come in and meet at one time. He'd give the spiel of what Crow's Landing is, and then you can ask questions that way. So if we get some concurrence for you, we'll reach out to Mr. Boggs and get some dates that work for him, and then float those by you guys. And it might be on a more personal level, or they get some good dialogue going back and forth with Mr. Boggs on that. So, and then I am proud to announce that tomorrow is the first official day for the new code enforcement officer, Miss Alicia Mendoza, and she'll be starting here at City Hall tomorrow, 3/1. So,
Plenty of work for her to do.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. On the Keith Bogg, you're saying like a one-on-one type of thing to where he doesn't do a public?
correct. He would come in and just meet with the council members 2-on-1, and then if you wanted a further public presentation, we could do that as well.
Yeah, because I think that's needed in reference to a project of this magnitude, that the public is aware of basically of the project and have the inputs on it. I'm pretty sure that Supervisor DeMartini will probably concur with that, because that's the reason for them doing a study to bring to the public. Am I correct? So if that does happen, I think that we need to take into consideration that we do open it up to the public so where they can.
And I agree, and I apologize, Mr. Council Member. I was thinking that the meetings were more of a not in lieu of, but in conjunction with.
Oh, okay.
So he would come out and meet with you guys and answer any questions that way, but also do a public presentation.
Oh, great, great.
So I apologize for not conveying that better.
Thank you, Michael. Chief, you have anything tonight?
We're still currently working on our staffing levels. We have people in background currently, so we're waiting to hear back from that so we can move forward. And if you haven't noticed, our new patrol car is on the streets now. So it was finished a couple weeks ago and is out and about.
Good.
And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Daphne?
I've been working on getting CSO Mendoza situated for her first day, so we're going to be doing some training and some projects together. Also just working on finishing up the skate park and dog park, weather permitting, with everything, obviously. I'm kind of at the mercy of the weather in terms of the dog park, so I have to wait for it to dry out a little bit. And just working on regular day-to-day functions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just one on the old skate park. Are we going to keep that open, hopefully?
For the time being, it will remain open. If we determine that it needs to be removed, we will bring that to the council to let you know and to bring the facts forward for your consideration. But at this point, there's no plans to move it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Nothing tonight.
Yeah, good evening. We keep eye on the Wilsonburg Creek, the rail trestle, as well as San Joaquin River. Since the rain stopped, public works focusing on filling the potholes, cleaning the storm drain system before the next one. So I can answer to any question you may have.
Any questions? No question. Thank you very much. You're
welcome.
Keith?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Michael hit a lot of the stuff I've been working on, so I will be trying to present a per diem type position to West Dan, hopefully March 13th. I should be on the agenda for that, so I'll probably bring that back to you guys later in the month of March for you guys to review. And then we did get colors for the fire station, so you'll be seeing a nice bright fire station out there soon. Any questions you may have?
The paint situation, is that a contractor that's going to come in and do that?
Correct. So we solicited estimates or bids and chose the most qualified for the job.
Because I was thinking in reference to, like a summer program where we can think of young adults or young school kids that might want to get experience as painters, or even apprenticeship program, to where we can bring in the unions, painters union, in terms of making sure that they maybe hire 1 or 2 people to be apprentices.
I mean, I do have projects around the fire station. If there's community members that are looking to volunteer hours and or get some of maybe an experience, I don't know to what depth you're looking at, but we do have many small projects that I invite anyone that's looking for community service hours. I have talked to the high school and let their staff know that I'm always looking for hours. So we do have plenty of work if there's people that are looking to volunteer time or get maybe some experience like you're saying.
Mhm.
But for a project of this magnitude, I think it was best it went to a contractor.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Casey, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just had one question going back to the indoor grows. I'm sorry, I didn't think about it until we were going through. Apartments, they're legal to grow, wouldn't they be? Because that seems such close living quarters.
That's a good idea.
That is a very good question. We'll look into that and make sure that it's addressed in the next time it comes before the council.
Okay.
I don't know.
And that may
if-
fall under the landlord requirement.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That they have to sign
There we
off on
go.
something.
Perfect.
So,
I don't know that Alma specifically specifies, but that's,
Yeah, I
That
just
would be
know
good
the
to know.
smell from one apartment to another
Right.
travels very
Yeah.
easily, so with the grow, I mean.
and then we'd also enforce it under the 6 plants per property rule. So it's not per residence, it's not per person living there,
Right.
so.
Gotcha. That's all I had. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I have nothing.
Nick?
Nope. Nothing tonight.
Marie?
Just congratulations to the Public Works Department for keeping the streets good and clean and flowing. It's been, with the flooding we've had, it's been quite a challenge, I'm sure, and you guys have done a great job. Appreciate it. Just one, I've had several comments from citizens in the community about the construction that's going on down in the Northampton area, down in that area where they're building the new homes and the apartments and so forth. One citizen indicated 3 flats in 6 weeks. We need to, is there some way we can take some action with the contractor to ask them to do be more careful with how they're handling the trash and the nails and that kind of stuff? Because I understand that normal stuff happens with construction, but 3 flats in a 6-week period seems a little excess.
Yeah, we'll put them on notice that their construction materials are getting into the public right of way, and that's not permissible. And if they don't take action, we will hire a street sweeper or somebody to go out there and clean it and then bill them.
Okay.
So Stephanie,
Excellent.
we'll have Stephanie get on that and make contact with them, with the construction manager.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
I'd just like to say the same thing that Murray just talked about, all the people that were involved during all the rain and everything, and thank you, Chief, for your reports.
Absolutely.
They were wonderful reports, and it's good to have that kind of information. People come up to you, and at least you can try to give a little bit of information, and they appreciate it too. I know Michael provided pictures, and the pictures were good to see. A picture's worth 1,000,000 words and things like that, but thanks to everyone for what you've done in keeping us safe. And the only other thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank our attorney tonight for her presentation. We're all trying to get on page as far as what's going on with marijuana and the laws and everything else. And it's not fun, but thank you very much. We greatly appreciate, the council really appreciates you giving us that information. And
I do have an informational item for the council before we adjourn. As a follow-up to the last meeting and the public comment made about the 908 Fig Lane property,
Yes.
we were able to, in conjunction with staff, to get the, thank you for that information, we were able to contact the attorney who is overseeing the trust that owns the property. So we are in discussions with them to try to figure out how we can remedy that situation.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
One thing, Bob, before we go. Stephanie, could you give me an update when you guys get a chance to start pouring that concrete at the dog park?
I'm happy to do so. We're just, yeah.
I'm getting hammered for some reason. I don't know. It's like, oh, okay, huh?
I wanted to get poured as much as everybody else, believe me.
Yeah. No, I know. But if you let me know, then I can put
When we
some-
schedule it, I can send the council an email, just letting you know when the
That'd be
truck will be
great.
out.
Okay, and with that, before I adjourn, I would like to wish our city manager a wonderful vacation, a well-deserved vacation. Enjoy yourself while you're away.
Don't drink too much tequila.
So can we call you?
There's no,
Yeah.
No cell phone.
No cell phones.
I don't know if I'll answer, but you can call.
With that, I ask for adjournment.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion is made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. for
And
coming.